the end of the report.
Good evening and welcome to the January 28th, 2026 meeting of the Lawrence Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Commission.
Yeah.
The first item of business this evening, is to turn to Becky Pepper for our instructions.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. Please silence your cell phones to minimize distraction during the meeting. When the Chair calls for public comment, please approach the podium to indicate that you wish to speak. Virtual participants should use the raised hand function to indicate that they wish to speak during public comment. Once your name is called, please unmute and turn your camera on to provide your comments. Please state your name before speaking. The city reserves the right to turn videos off or mute participants. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The primary format to access and participate in this meeting is in person at City Hall. Virtual access to view or participate in the meeting cannot be guaranteed. The chat function will not be monitored. If you have any trouble, the meeting can be viewed on the city's YouTube channel or cable channel 25.
Thank you, Becky. And now we will turn to approval of the minutes from our last meeting.
Move approval?
Move approval of the minutes from, is it the date?
From December 17?
17.
From December 17th, thank you. I only mention it just because I want to make sure that we have the correct date because we're trying to do them separately. Is there a second? Yep. All in favor of approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? All right. The December 17th meeting minutes pass. Now we'll receive reports from any of the committees. Did the Lawrence Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board meet this past week?
No.
Okay, great. There was a meeting of the North Lawrence Corridor Study. Is there a report from that meeting?
Yes. Commissioner Hayden and I were both at that meeting, and the consultants presented summaries of the first task force meeting, the surveys to which there had been 600 people who responded to the survey that was online, an open house, and they have had meetings with other partners and people they're interested in getting information from. And that was a very interesting and lengthy discussion, so we didn't get to the point of making any recommendations, and so we'll have another meeting.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
I had the survey come through for that, and I was struck as I read the survey that it did not seem to contemplate the most recent announcement that we've had about the Chiefs coming to Kansas, and that the closest town to that, is, at least to the west, is going to be Lawrence, and more specifically North Lawrence. And I just wonder if the conversations about this North Lawrence corridor is contemplating that, how they're thinking about it. Are they asking those questions?
I haven't heard anybody ask those questions specifically, but they have encouraged us, both in terms of the boards they put up, for us to see examples of, do you like this kind of industrial, this kind of agricultural, this kind of housing, a variety of sizes and densities, and encouraged us to also ask and think big. What do you want to see? And so things like relocating the railroad has been one of the things. And at some point, I can't believe that question about the Chiefs won't come up. We're still at the point of trying to get our ideas as big as possible before they start whittling them down. And one of the things the consultants did last night was they have now extended their study period for another 3 months. So if nobody else raises it, please come to a meeting and raise it.
Well, on the off chance that I don't, maybe I could ask you as our representative of the Planning Commission to say, hey,
I'd be happy to.
how about this ginormous $3 billion investment that's going in just over there? And maybe that we ought to talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to raise, and I'm really glad you did.
Appreciate it.
Yep. And I'd also like to say that thank you for bringing that up. And at this time, and we get committee reports, and usually somebody comes and tells us what happened. But part of that is for us to facilitate conversations and for the people who are representing the Planning Commission out and about on these things to also bring our concerns as planning commissioners to them. So thank you, and let's all remember that when we're giving reports, if we want information to go back to that body, that now's the time also to mention that. Thank you. We'll take communications at this point. Are there any written communications from the public?
All communications received by the deadline were included as part of your packet.
Are there any written communications from the staff, planning commissioners, or other commissioners?
None this evening.
All right. And do we have any written action of any waiver requests or determinations made by the city engineer?
Also none this evening.
And at this time, we will take disclosure of any ex parte communications regarding items on the agenda or anything pending before the Planning Commission. Any online?
No, I'm not seeing anyone indicating which they'd like to speak.
Okay. Are there any declarations of abstentions from specific items on the Commissioner's agenda tonight? Seeing none. All right. This time we'll take general public comment, and that is public comment that is on anything that is not specifically an agenda item for this evening. So if there's anyone here this evening, in person or online, that would like to provide general public comment to the Planning Commission, now is the time to do so. Is there anyone here tonight? I don't see anyone in person or online. So we'll move into our regular agenda for the evening. The first item will be to consider approving a request to rezone. And Luke Mortensen will be the planner to present it to us this evening. Luke, I barely recognized you. I like the new do.
It's 2026. I said, let's try something new. Okay. There we go. Okay, good evening, Commissioners. Luke Mortensen, planner with the Planning and Development Services Department. As Chair Hayden just noted, this first public hearing item tonight is a request to rezone approximately 4.15 acres from the M2, that's our mixed large neighborhood district, to the M3 mixed corridor district for a portion of an unplatted parcel. It's currently addressed as 566 George Williams Way. So this is a approximately 5-acre unplatted parcel located in the northeast corner of George Williams Way and West 6th Street, up in the northwest kind of quadrant of the city. You will see a little bit later on that this proposed rezoning is only for a portion of this parcel, not the entirety of the parcel. So moving on, the subject property is currently surrounded by several different zoning districts. The residential medium density and residential low density districts are located to the east, to the north, and the south. And then the commercial center district is located to the west. The subject property was annexed into the city in 2001. It's never been developed and was zoned urban reserve, that UR district, for over 2 decades until early last year, early 2025, when it was zoned to the CN2 district. That was the previous code's neighborhood commercial center district. I think Mary Miller walked you guys through that one. Shortly thereafter, as you know, our new land development code went into effect, and that CN2 district automatically converted to the M2 district, the mixed large neighborhood, and so that's how we have, that's why we have what we have today. Okay. So as you are all aware, this intersection has remained fairly undeveloped since annexation into the city. There are some 2-unit dwellings, a religious assembly, and then some minor utility, City of Lawrence minor utility uses to the east and to the northeast. But the city has been reviewing and approving building permits for detached dwellings and 2-unit dwellings to the south, across West 6th Street, across West 6th Street. And then staff believes it's reasonable to expect that we'll have some additional commercial development coming through over the next few years, especially as the Mercado development continues along. So per the submitted application, the applicant would like to establish a grocery store use on the southern portion of the subject property. So our new land development code does not have a defined grocery store use. That would fall under the general retail larger than 10,000 square foot use classification. That use is not permitted in the current M2 district. It is permitted in the proposed M3 district with a special use permit, which means if you forward a recommendation for approval onto the City Commission and they approve it, you would ultimately see this property again. You would see the SUP for the proposed general retail use over 10,000 square feet. Two things to note before I move on. First thing, this is just the first step in the site's development. This would require a major subdivision. As you know, preliminary plats would come before you, and a final plat would be administratively approved by the planning director unless there were any easements or rights of way to be dedicated. So all in, we're looking at the rezoning, a major subdivision, and a special use permit. Second thing is, at this early stage, staff doesn't know what the subject property's final lot layout will look like. The applicant is not required to provide that information at this time. It could be one lot, it could be two lots or 3 lots, so long as those future lots satisfy whatever district they're in, those dimensional standards, we would know at the platting stage. So it's possible that this could be a split zoned lot in the future. It may be 2 separately zoned lots in the future. Split zoning is not good or not bad. It's not prohibited by our code. It can just make it a little bit more challenging during that site planning process to check for setbacks and different development standards, as the different zoning districts have different standards, as you know. So you all are aware of your role tonight, so you'll be forwarding a recommendation onto the City Commission. We reviewed this proposed rezoning against our review and decision-making criteria. In the interest of time and brevity, and because we ultimately landed on a recommendation of approval, I'll defer to the staff report for the analysis of most of these points. I will just emphasize one overarching point, that the previous code had the commercial strip district that converted to the mixed corridor district. Even though they converted, they are not like for like districts. Where we looked to limit the CS district in the past, we don't have that same desire to limit the expansion of the mixed corridor district. We have at its core, it's a mixed-use district. We have reduced building setbacks. We have new design standards and guidelines for this district. So really, we believe it's an appropriate district for this, this northeast corner of the intersection. So like I said, our staff recommendation is to forward the rezoning request to the City Commission with a recommendation of approval. Our applicant is here with us tonight, and then I'm going to leave the criteria up here on the screen, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you've got them.
Thank you, Luke. At this time, would the applicant like to address the board?
All right. Good evening, Commission. Corby Rust, Land Plan Engineering. The sole purpose for this rezoning request is the square footage of the building, as Luke mentioned. Aldi is looking at the southern portion of the property. They have a roughly 20,000 square foot building. My company's role in this will be the rezoning, the platting, and general preparation of the lot, the pad sites for the 2 businesses. I will tell you that our plat that is forthcoming divides this acreage into 2 lots, and it does match the zoning, so we're not looking at any kind of split zoning at this time. It works out. Our lot boundaries match our zoning boundaries, and even though I will not be, most likely not be doing the site plan portion, I have done quite a bit of work with the test fit of an Aldi and the requirements and the parking and the truck traffic and everything else, and have worked with MSO and planning it up to this point to make sure our access works and our slope works and everything works, and everything works. So, yeah, really just trying to get the 20,000 square foot building on the southern portion of the property. And I'll answer any questions.
Great, thank you. If we have questions, we'll come back.
Okay.
And this time we'll take public comment on this item. Is there anyone from the public here to provide comment on this item? Anyone online?
No, I'm not seeing anyone online.
All right, no public comment. Then at this time, then we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, you can.
Either for Jeff or for Luke. I'd like.
Pretty far back.
Okay. The question is about why the choice, if we're going to change zoning, why choose a zoning category that also requires an SUP? Why not just zone it so that it's natively allowed?
Yeah, so that is actually, I think it's probably an unintended consequence of the new land development code. Several months ago, when we were doing our pre-application meeting with Corby and his other stakeholders, we discovered that the general retail over 2,000 or over 10,000 required the SUP, and we thought that's kind of strange. Why would this, why should this require an SUP? Because the new land development code doesn't have a defined like food and beverage, retail sales, grocery use like the old code did, and that with the goal of collapsing uses, I think it was anticipating larger retail uses than a 20,000 square foot grocery store. And so this is actually on Becky's list of cleanup items that we may examine as we hit the year mark on this new land development code. So it's possible that we get in there and adjust that use table such that maybe it doesn't require an SUP anymore. But at this time, we would still have to require that SUP.
Okay, thank you.
Have we always zoned public right-of-way?
Yes, so that's the land development code. When you submit your application for rezoning or annexation, part of that is a legal description. And because this property is not platted yet, it's a kind of like a meets and bounds description, X degrees, X minutes this way, it's a technical description. And some surveyors will give us the boundaries of the lot, and other people will give us the boundaries of the lot and the area to the road center line. Our code gives the planning director authority when we update the map, the actual zoning map, to take that zoning down to the center line. So we don't need applicants necessarily to give us that area. We will accept it. Our solution is, if this moves forward to the city commission and we draft an ordinance for them to review, we'll have the applicant give us a description that only includes the property, and then we will adjust it so that it goes to the road center line, and that their property description doesn't include that road right of way. Does that make sense?
Well, the reason I was wondering is that in the event we needed to acquire that right-of-way, won't it be more expensive if it's zoned?
I can't speak to that. I can just speak to, regardless of how the legal description was submitted by the applicant, if they gave us just the lot or they gave us the lot plus the right-of-way, we would extend that new M3 district zoning to the center line.
Okay.
When we update the maps, yeah. And we've communicated that with Corby's folks, and so they're aware.
Thank you.
Other questions, discussion? Looks like any online, from any commissioners online?
No.
All right. If there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. Move to approve the request to rezone Z-25-0017, approximately 4.5 acres, from M2 district to M3 district for the portion of property currently addressed as 566 George Williams Way. Period.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion pending and a second. Any further discussion on this motion? I have a question of the motioner. You said period. You said without based on the finding. Okay, I was wanted to make sure because normally we incorporate the findings presented in the staff report. So I just wanted to double
I would
check.
certainly take that as a friendly amendment.
Would you take that as friendly?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just wanted to double check there wasn't something that we wanted to point out in the finding.
It was just me forgetting what I was supposed to say.
Okay, I did not mean to call you out in public. Sorry. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any one disagree? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to the second item on our agenda this evening, which is to consider approving a request for a conditional use permit. And Drew will be our planner on this. And he is online. All right.
Good evening, Commissioners. Drew Bilby, Planner 2 with Planning Development Services. Apologies that I can't be there in person right now. I'm currently on crutches, and I didn't really feel like doing that in the Planning Commission room, going back and forth. So sorry about being online. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started. As mentioned, this is a conditional use permit for an equipment storage use on 1805 East 200 Road. Just a little bit of history on this site. This use was originally established with a conditional use permit in 2023. The applicant now is just seeking to relocate and adjust the use area dedicated on the site. They had a site plan that kind of showed basically where they were changing. There's just kind of a lay down yard right now. They're just kind of reorganizing that. So there are no new uses proposed with this conditional use permit. It is just altering the existing use that's there right now. So with conditional use permits, we have 8 items to kind of consider with the review. I'll go through those real quickly with staff's interpretation. The first item is the compliance with provisions in the code. So all previous conditions that were on the previous site plan in 2023 are being carried forward with this CUP. They're added as notes on the back of, or on the final page of this site plan. So there are no new conditions being proposed except for the usual time limit. I'll go over those as the last point. Some of those conditions and the previous site plan or conditional use permit were protections of trees, or not permitting wholesales on the property, no hazardous materials, and dust control for the applicant to maintain for East 200 Road. So the second item is the compatibility with nearby zonings and uses. Since this does not include an intensification on the site, they're just moving things more so to the interior of the lot away from the right-of-way. Staff believes that this is compatible with nearby zonings and uses. The third item kind of goes on to this with the character of the area. Surrounding zonings are AG1 and AG2 in the county. Those are, and the uses around that are residential and agricultural. Number 4 is the suitability of the property for the use. As mentioned, there is no intensification. The use is just continuing to do so. So staff still finds that it is suitable to be used on this property. Number 5 is the impact on the natural environment. Since this project does propose to increase the grass cover on the site, staff believes that this is ultimately a positive impact. So no concerns there from staff. 6 is the impact on the community's facilities. This is more for like public utilities. Again, staff doesn't expect any impacts on this since it is remaining the same intensity. The dust prevention is being carried forward, so there is no issue on the county for that dust prevention. Number 7 is the conformance with the comprehensive plan. Again, this use is compatible as it's remaining the same, and this property is not located within any of the growth tiers in Plan 2040. Finally, number 8 is the limit of the use. Staff is proposing, as usual, a 10-year limit on the conditional use permit, with a 5-year review being done jointly between the county zoning codes and city staff. Again, that's normal. We think that that's a good limit for this use. So finally is the staff's professional recommendation, and staff is recommending approval of this conditional use permit. So forwarding to the Board of County Commissions with a recommendation of approval, subject to the conditions in the staff report. Again, those 2 conditions are, let me grab just to read them specifically, that it will be reviewed after 5 years by the Zoning and Codes Office, and that it will expire after 10 years after adoption. So that is all I have for staff's presentation. I believe the applicant is either in the room or online if you have any questions for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. At this time, would the applicant like to address the committee? Thank you.
Come up here, doesn't matter.
Yes. Come to the podium, please. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm Jared, this is Chris. We run a company called Right Way Solutions. We're just, right now, a small scale lawn landscape company servicing the Topeka and Lawrence areas. Really all we're going to do is take what was existing we kind of had a house with a little shop, parking stuff in front of that and putting stuff in that shop. And full scale, Evergy used part of that, our land as a lay down yard and with the rock. So what we want to do is go on in, and I'm assuming you have a map of what we kind of drew. So you'll see where I'm going to take most of the rock. We are going to take most of the rock out and just leave the part that's actually behind the house, behind the trees. Just want to move our stuff back there. That's really kind of it. Nothing else has changed. We're just getting it more out of the light.
Okay. So. Thank you. If we have any questions for you, we will
Awesome.
ask.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, is there any public comment on this item? I don't see any public comment on this item, so bring it back to the commission for discussion. Any?
I only have one question, and that's why are we asking them to come back in 5 years on review? Would it be okay for that to be removed and we just respond if there's any kind of a complaint or a problem?
That 5-year review would be an administrative review. After 10 years, the CUP would expire, and then they would come forward for renewal.
So they don't have to do anything at 5 years?
No, that's entirely at the staff level.
Okay, all right.
And most CUPs that come from the county, excuse me, most CUPs in the county come with a 5 and a 10-year on that one, which is a difference between what you see a special use permit for the city, which may have shorter timeline or an indefinite timeline on that one. But typically, a conditional use permit comes with a 5-year staff review and then a 10-year expiration.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, maybe more for Carl or the applicant. There was a laydown yard on this particular piece of property. When, I believe it was through a TBU, when did that expire?
I don't have the exact date as to when that expired in front of me. Just for some context, that property was used as a laydown yard for a transmission line project by Evergy. One of the conditions of that temporary business use was that upon completion of that project, that the gravel issue be addressed. And this is coming back to you to address that gravel issue. They're removing a portion of it, and the remainder of it will be used for the landscaping business that owns and operates on that property.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my question I'm trying to grapple in my mind, because there's different processes to get different types of use for different amounts of time. And so I was kind of curious about the use of the TBU was this chunk of the property, not the chunk of the property that the current CUP is on. Is that right?
Correct.
So there was a CUP for this equipment storage on one portion. Now, is the entirety of that, or what was created or allowed for that, created for that, the current CUP being moved over to the second piece of property? That, is that correct? Do I understand that correct? Or will the CUP be on both pieces? As I understand that it's under one owner, but one piece had a CUP and one piece had a TBU. Are they both pieces going to be now under this CUP?
Correct. The CUP will allow that landscaping business to use the remaining gravel area, and I believe their plans indicated putting up some buildings and storing some of their heavy equipment or other equipment vehicles in that area.
Okay, so the CUP that was, that's currently on there will remain on there, and then this portion of the property will also be folded into the CUP under, with this, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm just curious about some of the conditions of the TBU. I guess what I'm trying to, it went through the process of a temporary business use, this chunk, this portion of the land that we're talking about, which is a different process and has different standards. And so I'm just curious as to, was the land put back and all of the conditions of the TBU met, or is the land not in the same condition as it was before the TBU?
Without having all of those conditions in front of me, I believe the conditions were met with the exception of what's going to happen with the gravel. And that's why this is coming before you tonight, to address the use of that gravel behind the structure.
Okay, so with the TBU, gravel was put down, and as a part of the approval process, they were supposed to pick that gravel up.
I believe that was the case.
And this land, this property we're talking about involves prime soils, is that correct?
I'm not sure about the amount of prime soils on the property.
Okay. The agenda from the 2023 TBU is pretty limited, so I don't have access to all of that information. But I'm just trying to figure out the different processes that would have created the situation before us now, coming before us with the TBU, and how that connects to the process for, or CUP, process of what the TBU was approved for, and how the land was supposed to be restored and kind of put back to the way that it was when the TBU was approved. But now that's not going to happen because there's going to be a CUP, or because the petitioners are seeking a CUP on this portion that would leave the infrastructure, or the gravel in this case, that was put in place with the TBU. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
I'm trying to just kind of understand the TBU process for other people who wonder why I'm asking this. The TBU process is different, and it doesn't come to the Planning Commission. It goes directly to the County Commission. There's less involvement generally of the public. And so there was the TBU, and the land was changed, right? Gravel was added. The County Commission approved adding gravel to the prime soils. I don't know if exactly the map and if that's where the gravel is going to stay, right? But under one of the conditions was that the gravel would be removed, and the land would kind of be put back to the way it was before the TBU. But now that's not going to happen because there's a CUP. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, and so I just, for me, it highlights to me how a TBU and the CUP interplay, and like what, and so I'm just kind of curious about that process. I believe the original CUP, the neighbors were opposed. They don't see, no one from the public is here today for the transfer, the move over, but I'm just a little curious about, is that typical to have infrastructure, or in this case, gravel, put in a TBU and then remain and be converted and turned into a CUP?
If I'm remembering correctly from the initial discussions related to the TBU, there was a proposal that some of the gravel might remain for that landscaping business to use a portion of that property. Also, just for context, I'd like to point out that the laydown yard activity began prior to when the temporary business use permit was obtained. So it did start out as a violation that was addressed later.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
I think I remember this item being before the Planning Commission when it was in violation prior to going to the County Commission. And the recollection, I've slept since then, but the recollection that I have is that what we're talking about tonight was pretty consistent with that the gravel was going to be put down, it had already been put down, and that part of the thinking of the applicant tonight was that once this thing that was required, that was thrust on them by Evergy, was complete, that would be actually a great way for them to reuse the thing that had been done to their property to expand their business. I remembered that it was in front of planning.
Yes, I apologize. The CUP that is currently on the property was before the Planning Commission, because the CUP comes before the Planning Commission, and you're correct. That was kind of what was going on with there. I was asking about the TBU process, that it was the TBU that was in violation and that was put on. And I don't know that had to do with the gravel. I believe that had to do with removal of trees. And may have also involved gravel. I don't know. But I'm just curious in the context of how often we see something that is goes through the TBU process that makes, which is temporary business use, that then gets converted into something more permanent like this through a CUP process, because the processes are different. And so I'm just curious about how often that happens, in particular because of one of our later items, which is looking at zoning and codes and whether or not they're doing things. And so I'm just curious about if that happens often.
What I can say about laydown yards is that the only way to permit those per the zoning code is as a temporary business use. There's a specific section in the zoning code under temporary business uses where it includes a list of specific uses that can be permitted as a TBU, and laydown yards are one of those, along with several others. Having reviewed all of the temporary business uses that have been approved since the 1980s, 1970s, several of them have eventually turned into something more permanent, into a CUP. It really depends on the type of use and the specific situation.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate that. So just for my clarity, this was a TBU. It was gravelled due to the TBU. TBU required removing the gravel, but instead of doing that, the CUP is coming through to remove some of the gravel, leave some of the gravel, and move and expand the business into this property. Is that where we're at? Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any further questions or discussion?
Well, I have a question following up on that. Does that mean that when we're looking at things like our zoning code, our land development code, perhaps we should look at that interplay between the CUP and the temporary business unit? Is that something that you think we should be looking at?
Well, projects like this certainly make me wonder about that, because I think there's some really great things I see about this. Like, there's some infrastructure put down, and so let's use it, right? Let's expand into it and let's use it. So I think that I think that my concern was just simply remembering that the neighbors were somewhat opposed. There was a violation with the TBU for the laydown yard, and then the gravel was kind of promised through that TBU process, kind of promised to be removed. And so approval of a TBU and the conditions are kind of a part of how you get your approval. So then if people aren't following through on the conditions of the TBU, to me that calls into question the approval process, right? And so that's why I asked those questions. I guess that would be my answer, Jane. I guess, perhaps, I don't know.
Well, could we consider adding that to the list of things that the land development code might look at in the future?
Not to spoil your next item up, but that's kind of what that diagnostic for the county zoning code is kind of into, is those things there. So I know the group is here and hopefully overheard what I just said, but I think that's one of those things it's probably in that diagnostic that we'll talk about next, is those kind of, interfaces and elements of the code and how those different processes line up.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I will look for a motion.
I'll do it. I move that we approve the conditional use permit UP-25-0009 for an equipment storage use located at 1805 East 200 Road and forwarding it to the Board of County Commissioners with a recommendation for approval based on the findings presented in the staff report and subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
Have a second? Second. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, our last item for the evening was deferred, so we will move to miscellaneous old, or actually new, business. We will, I believe, see Clarion and Associates back again. Are they here, or are they Zooming, or, okay. Long time no see. So Clarion Associates will be here to introduce a new project they'll be working on for the county regarding the Douglas County Zoning and Land Use Regulations Diagnostic Review. So I will turn it over to them. Yes, please.
Thank you. I got it. Okay. Maybe. Whoops. Thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all again. My name is Gabby Hart. I'm a principal with Clarion Associates. I'm here with Elizabeth Garvin, a director at our Denver office. And we are here this evening to introduce the Douglas County Land Use Regulations Diagnostic Review project. So just a little bit about Clarion. We are a national land use consulting firm with 2 offices, one in Denver, one in Chapel Hill. Elizabeth and I are out of the Denver office. We've got about 20 or so staff, and we work between both planning and code projects. Elizabeth and I are primarily code writers and code drafters. We have had the opportunity to work with many different communities throughout the country, focused in the Mountain West and the Midwest, as well as the Southeast. And as you all may be aware, we did have the wonderful opportunity to work with you all on the City of Lawrence code update several years ago. So we are here tonight to talk about the diagnostic review for Douglas County. And so our project goals are really to take a deep dive into the current zoning code and identify the strengths and weaknesses in both the current zoning and subdivision standards, and really figure out how they do or do not align with Plan 2040, as well as the different area-specific plans and the different comprehensive plans of some of the incorporated communities. We'll also be taking a look at the zoning administration process and how the city and the county work together across different planning applications and where that process could be improved. And that also includes looking at that regulatory consistency across incorporated and unincorporated areas, since that's a really important part about growing together as a region rather than pockets. And then also just providing some strategic options and recommendations for how to modernize the land use regulations and support future updates. So our project timeline is going to look pretty short. It's about 6 months because for those of you that were part of the City of Lawrence code update, this was effectively step 1 of that full code update where we did an assessment. So for Douglas County, we are doing a diagnostic review, meaning that document is going to lay out and identify where the code should be updated, where it needs to be reorganized, other policy considerations that need to be discussed, and really present that. It is not going to make any changes to the zoning and subdivision regulations themselves in this. So we are starting out this week with our project orientation meetings. So we'll be meeting with Public Works, planning staff, the rural water districts, the townships, sustainability, just a lot of the internal code users that really dive deep into the regulations day in, day out, and have identified some of the issues that need potential solutions. And we'll take what we learn this week and from our conversations with you all and County Commission, who we just had the opportunity to speak with, and prepare an issue identification memorandum. So this is basically just an initial list of here's what we heard, here's what we're seeing. Is there anything that we're missing? And so we'll bring that back to you all for your feedback. And then we'll move into the real meat of the project, which is the actual diagnostic review. And so that will lay out all of the different topics and parts of the zoning and subdivision regulations and discuss best practices, pros and cons to different options presented to address solutions. And we'll do some work sessions with you all as well before presenting that final diagnostic review, which again is the document that just lays out here are some of the concerns and problems in the current zoning regulations, and here are some options for how to go about addressing those. So we've got this set of questions, but really they're just meant to sort of serve as a primer, and if you don't have initial reactions right now, that's totally fine. If you start thinking about it later and have feedback, we're happy to take it. But really, I'll kind of focus on two of the things that we talked a bit about with the County Commission are the conflicts that commonly arise between county approvals and municipal plans or expectations. So if anyone has any thoughts on that or just any questions about the project, happy to take those now.
Anyone have questions?
Oh,
Great.
I have some questions.
Okay.
Our comprehensive plan, as you know, and is really the standard that we use to judge whether our subdivision regulations and our zoning regulations are implementing those policy things. And I presume that that's where you're starting. We're not going off and looking at whether our code, our county code or our subdivision regulations are meeting some other standards, but it would be Plan 2040 that is the standard. Correct?
Yes, correct.
And it would be, so this is a project between the city and the county, or is it just the county?
I could have kicked us off a little bit. Sean Peterson, the Deputy County Administrator with Douglas County. This is really intended to be a partnership like most of our relationship is with the city. But again, this is really being headed up by the county. So I think what we're trying to do is take a look at, again, as Gabby went into, the notion of we have a comprehensive plan and then that's the base. And then how are we working that plan from a technical standpoint? And that's where you get into, again, the zoning code, the subdivision regulations. So again, we're really honing in on the idea that, I used this reference earlier with the county commission, we have a car. That is the comprehensive plan. We know how that's supposed to perform. Every once in a while, it doesn't always perform to expectations. So we'll take that in, we'll get a diagnostic review from a mechanic. They'll come back out and they'll say, okay, here are all the things that we think we can do to improve the performance of that vehicle. And then it's sort of a choose your own adventure from that standpoint. And that's what ultimately will come back to the county commission. You all will be part of that, as was said, and ultimately we'll come and make some decisions at that point based off of that prioritization process.
So will you be making recommendations as to any amendments to Plan 2040?
I don't think the intent is to make any recommendations to the comp plan. No, it's not to rehash the comp plan or to have a conversation about that. That's a separate, as you're well aware, of a very high touch, involved process. This is very much a high sort of technical review of matching up again whether or not our code, county code, is aligning or misaligned with that comprehensive plan or other plans that have been adopted by the county. Think of things like food policy is a good example of something that we've adopted. There are others, obviously, but that's, again, that's a technical review is what we're after, not so much a rehashing of whether or not the plans are make sense or are good plans or bad plans.
Well, I ask that because we have a statutory obligation to review the comprehensive plan on an annual basis.
Sure.
And it seems to me that perhaps our annual review should not be stepping on what you're doing, and you shouldn't be, somehow we ought to coordinate or collaborate.
Sure. I can
invent that twice.
Yeah, I'll defer that maybe a little bit to Jeff and Becky. What I would say is they're different.
Okay.
So again, anything that you're statutorily obligated to do from a comprehensive plan or any other sort of review process still will continue as it normally would or ought to. This is just running in tandem with that with respect to, again, if that's something that you're concerned about, I think that's the feedback that we're looking for is, again, are we misaligned anywhere and how can we improve?
Yeah, so we should do our annual review quite independently of what you're doing.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yes, typically the comp plan influences the zoning codes, and I'll go back to the early days of the land development code update, so Elizabeth and Gabby can throw things at me here, but really the comp plan is the foundational document, and you evolve the codes based on what you have in your plan, which is why you saw such a different pivot coming out of the land development code from 2006 to the 25 code. This is effectively the first step of what we did in that land development code process, which is let's look at 2040, and then what does that pivot look like for the county zoning code as it starts to kind of go through that evolution. And as Gabby put out, that's really what we saw in that first step of the land development code, that assessment, that diagnostic is really the roadmap of what happens next. Now, the city took the next step and went ahead and just went down the roadmap all the way to the end conclusion on that one. And this will have that same process, maybe on a little bit of a different timeline, but this is really the opportunity to look at the base documents, which are your plans, like 2040, area plans, and all those reference plans that we have in there, and adjust the zoning to get out of it what you've asked for in the comprehensive plan. So it's really, this is informing the zoning, not so much zoning informing upwards to the comp plan, if you will.
And then with respect to the subdivision regulations, of course, those are joint, and I'm assuming that they will remain joint. Is that, are we going to still have joint subdivision regulations, or are we going to have separate ones for the county and the city?
I think it's a little too soon to kind of get into that conversation, only because we don't know what the diagnostic will say from the county standpoint, because that may be an outcome that comes from that. It was not an outcome that we saw when we did the land development code, so there might be the benefit to maintain that. There may not be that benefit the same line. But that's probably a little premature to kind of just jump to give you an answer on that one, because we just don't know what the diagnostic's going to find yet.
Can I ask a follow-up just to that? So what I hear you saying is that yes, Chapter 11, or, well, the subdivision regulations are joint, but this diagnostic is going to look at them from the county perspective and evaluate whether, as written, they're doing what the county wants them to do in comprehensive plan as far as the county is concerned. And then that will inform maybe whether or not they continue. The city might look at that and be like, yes, we agree, or no, we don't. And so then that will inform a further decision about how intertwined they are or what they look like for the county versus the city.
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty much, it's the best way to describe it, honestly.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Rexford, you had a question?
Not necessarily a question, just a comment. I think this is really, really important to give feedback and to provide this information. I am in no way prepared to give thoughtful comments tonight. I didn't know, I mean, if I should have known, sorry, but I didn't. Is it possible for us to have a work session, carve off some time on mid-month where we can really give them some feedback, or you guys tell us what sessions to plug into?
I think that is, I'll work with staff on trying to figure out the best, and you can answer that question in a moment, but maybe we could work with staff, because I don't know if the best thing would be a work session or a mid-month,
However it
or
is.
coming back
I'm
and just
saying-
having a discussion, because we sometimes have discussions about things, and I agree, and do not feel bad there. The questions that we got were not in the part of our packet, so.
And kind of to the question for the board, you can definitely adjust your mid-month. You had mid-month on the land development code and the process related to that one. That's something you can adjust a mid-month schedule to kind of work in there. And we're happy to work with Clarion and county, let me try with the right phrase here, county staff to make that work for their schedules too. And so don't know what that timeline might look like immediately. And just for the commission's awareness, that would push down some other items that we'd already kind of penciled in, but we can make those adjustments and fit that in if you so desired.
However it's done, I completely defer to you. I just
I'll work on it, I
can't-
promise.
I just can't do justice tonight.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Did you have something to answer?
I
that?
just want to clarify too, we can recognize that this may be the first touch point, and that's, that's where we're at. And I just want to amplify that, this is nowhere near, getting completed. So if you have questions, or if you want to respond to these in different ways, again, that's the feedback that we're looking at. Again, you all are heavily involved in this process as far as what goes into this from a technical standpoint. So again, feel free to engage in any level that you feel comfortable. I just want to create that space for you all that, again, your voice is important in this, and a lot of people's voices are important in this. Gabby kind of went through that line of folks that we've already identified, but there's going to be more touch points along the way.
And it's my understanding that the county commission heard it this evening for the first time, kind of. I mean, the discussion on it, they looked at those questions, and obviously we've been here, so we don't know how robust their conversation was, but we could watch that, I assume there'll be more touch points with them as well. So everyone's just kind of getting started.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. This was something that was talked about within the 2026 budget conversation. So this is something that was brought up at the county level 6-7 months ago. So this is just, again, getting started. So however this works for you all to participate, again, we're happy to be a part of it.
So as part of that, will you be having some public meetings where people who are interested in subdivision regulations or in the county code will be able to give you input?
Yeah, that was a big conversation with the county commission as well, is how is the public going to be engaged? And I'll let Clarion folks kind of speak to that as well, but they've kind of laid out this path as far as how they do this. And this is, again, meant to be that technical, high touch point of folks that are working within the code. So oftentimes when you have a project come through, those same types of folks that are reviewing that project from that initial application are the folks that we're looking at to say, okay, what's the water situation in this particular area from a rural capacity standpoint? What's the emergency response mechanism? What's the public works infrastructure components? Those are the things that we're after. Again, nothing is being decided with this diagnostic review as far as any changes or amendments. That would come at a later time. So I really just want to emphasize that this is not a decision-making process. This is an informative process. But I don't know, Gabby, if you want to speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, I think the goal is that the intent of creating the diagnostic review report and having that be the first document or deliverable that the public can see and give input on is so that they have more to react to and they have more context. Our first step is talking with staff and internally, because of the fact that they really are the ones who deal with the real nitty-gritty technical tweaks and details that we're trying to identify within the diagnostic report, in addition to types of issues that come up from an applicant perspective or from the public's perspective. But really the goal is to get it to that diagnostic form so that the public has more to learn from and gain a shared understanding from, and then go into the public input. Because again, it's not making any changes, but it's just going to be a thorough set of recommendations, suggestions that then public input could help inform what you do or do not move forward with in the future.
So at this point, your contract is just with the county, not with the city in any way?
Correct.
I'm just curious of some of the methods. So you're talking about like talking to different people and getting input from the community and the people who are working with this. Is that the main form of input that you're going to be getting, or will you be like going back through and like looking at projects and like the land use applications that have come through and what's been kind of approved and not approved, or how things are working with like historical, like what's happened in the last several years, or however you would define that, on like actually on the ground?
Yeah, we'll be working with staff to identify. Usually, it's common applications, common things that either get appealed or variances, or what kind of applications cause you kind of the most issues or are the most complicated when they get to the public process. We've already heard from the county commission of doing that sort of analysis about what applications go to a public hearing versus administrative. So we'll really lean on staff a lot with that. Staff has already done a lot of great research on their own about certain application types or certain lists of problems that they've already identified. So I think it can involve more of that. But we really just rely on staff to bring things up, and if there are things they bring up where we think some data like that would help, then we'll request it and work with them on that.
And I assume that would also include like not just problems, but things that are working well.
Yes.
Like we
Yes.
changed, I think, relatively recently, like how many acres it took to divide, like in order to divide, things like that. And so applications have come through that have been denied, and they may come through a lot, but like it's kind of working in a way because that was the purpose of the regulation. So I'm assuming that we'll be looking at not just the problems,
right.
Or I guess it depends how you define problem, but I'm just curious as to the different ways.
Yep.
Other questions?
So at this point, the city subdivision regulations are just on hold.
Right, we're just looking at the counties.
Okay.
Part of the process we came out of land development because we identified some things in the subdivision regulations that weren't quite aligned as part of that. And so we hadn't had time to kind of spin up and work on that one because it takes a very different initiation process when it's a joint document between Eudora, Lawrence, and Douglas County. And so that's quite an undertaking for planning to get on the ground with at this point. So we have not started that at this point in time, which is actually beneficial because depending upon what the diagnostic tells us, that may give us more insights about what amendments or what we need to be working on inside of that. So it's really good to have this go through a process and then understand when we open up the subdivision regulations, what do we want to be focusing on or what do we want to not be making sure we don't adjust in there. So it's really good timing on this to have this ahead of even beginning that amendment, in my opinion.
Another group that I think it's useful to hear from are the developers. And I don't know if you guys have plans to talk to developers and businesses because, they're one of the primary users of the code. So that would be, is that something you guys are planning to do?
We hadn't planned on it,
Okay.
from my knowledge.
I think we've talked about that, and I think that's the feedback we're looking for from this initial conversation and the subsequent conversations is, again, what are we trying to, what, but who are we trying to work with, and how are we doing that, and ensuring that, again, it's a very inclusive process as much as we can be. But I just want to stress this is really that technical review of what is, the shalls and mays and things like that. Sure. A little bit more than that, I'll to give credit to it. But yes, I think that at some point we're going to get to those conversations to say if there are any changes to code, that's where we start to get, that's where we want that feedback.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I assume businesses and agricultural production and whatnot would also be constituents that you would reach out to in the same extent that you would to the developers and those who are using the.
Right.
Looks like Tanya wants to address us.
Hi, everyone. Tanya Voigt, Zoning and Codes Director. So one thing I wanted to just point out is that we work with developers, we work with home builders, we work with agricultural producers every single day in our office. And so some of the things that we're actually hearing from them right now are what's not working. And that's what why we want to do the diagnostic, is to have those conversations. And it's a lot of, some of the technicalities are, on our end on how we process something, but other things are, what are we already hearing from the landowners and the public?
Thank you.
Great question. Other questions? I don't know if you.
Exciting work.
Yeah, I don't know if you were here earlier or not, but I would say that I have concerns about the TBU process and particularly how it connects to infrastructure or to what is temporary and how that then would play into other parts of the code and other procedures. So I already mentioned that, but anybody have any other? The questions are no longer in front of us, so we don't actually know. But is anybody have anything else they'd like to raise this evening, but knowing that they're going to come back and that we'll have other opportunities?
Can we get those questions so that we can be thinking about it? Yeah, some form.
Yeah, we can send that out as an item and make sure it's attached going forward on that.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else for us?
No?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we're excited to work with you. Thanks. And with that, I will entertain a motion.
To adjourn.
Yes. You move to Jane. You're moving to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Yes. All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned. Motion adjourned.
Thank you, Madam
Until
Chair.
battling a cold.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Getting over